It's time for commentary, the show where I look at your comments on my videos for the week and I respond. And some of y'all agree with me, some of y'all don't. Let's go with the most interesting one of the week. We're going to start here, and this is from the Monday video, my first Browns mock draft of 2023. Look, man, I stepped up the work here, in my opinion, because I wasn't able to get to 3-day mocks because I wasn't that deep into my research yet. But this year I went into my bag and I was able to get into a 7-round mock pretty early. I felt great. Like, if the Browns walked away with what I have mocked here, I would feel great. Now, given that this mock came before the combine, before free agency, there are things in this mock that are going to change after the combine, and they're gonna change after free agency. But that's why the mocks are 1.0, 2.0, 3. Like software, because they're gonna change. And it's nice to go back and look at what the original one was, and then versus what you end up doing because of all the changes that happen, the incremental changes that happen around the team during that time period. Like, a new special teams coordinator. Maybe they get if they draft another kicker, but you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be changes made to this team because of that. But that's the first video we're going to talk about. Let's get into some of the comments in that video. Parker McMillan says, I like it overall. I just wouldn't use 2 picks back to back for a running back since we already have Ford on the team as is. So it'll work down from there. I'd probably invest in another tackle in that pick, to be honest. The thing is that I don't think of these picks as I need to take a position, right? That's not the philosophy that I would love to use. The way I was thinking was, there are positions that we need. There's also a priority list of players, right? A best player available. And to me, all the tackles, I got the tackle I wanted in Ryan Hayes. So I knew I could get him in the 7th round. So why take him in the 4th round just so I don't take 2 running backs back to better when I like both Tajay Spears and I like Deuce Vaughn? Why not get them both if they right there and they on the top of my board? So that's why I went with 2 running backs back to back. It was a value thing to me. And yeah, we already have Jerome Ford, but Nick Chubb could be on his way out after next year. I think that's when his contract's up. And then if you only have Jerome Ford and maybe a Deuce Vaughn, like, that's not deep enough. You need 3-4 running backs in the NFL. So I think you're going to lose Kareem Hunt. You're going to lose Dearness Johnson. That room's empty now. Why not add 2? Because you're going to need 2. And why not take 2 of them that you like a lot? Because we know, hey, if Nick Chubb has to go and Jerome Ford, Tajay Spears, and Deuce Vaughn are all good, we're going to be fine. It's going to take 3 to replace that 1. So I would rather go for overkill in running back. And I have this philosophy, and this is just my personal philosophy with certain positions, is that overkill is necessary, right? Like, I may not think the Browns need a bunch of wide receivers, but I understand why you would want them, because overkill at wide receiver is always useful. Overkill at running back is always useful. Overkill at offensive line and defensive line is always useful. Overkill is not really that useful for the secondary, in my opinion, or linebackers, like, because in my opinion, teams that have really good linebackers, it really doesn't affect the level of play of the defense. They usually are good without those linebackers or bad without those linebackers or bad with those linebackers. You know what I mean? It doesn't really move the needle in any really discernible way. And if you look at like some of the numbers for Baltimore, right, before they traded for Roquan and after they traded for, it's the same defense. It's like slightly better. Like, linebackers to me in this era really don't move the needle because they're so easy to scheme around, even if they're great. And the same thing goes with DBs. It's like, even if you do have elite DBs, guys are going to make plays at wide receiver because that's what the rules allow for. But where you can really affect the game is definitely the defensive line, offensive line, wide receiver, running back. And then quarterback look, I don't want to be deep at quarterback, but I do want to be good at quarterback. You know what I mean? But that's a whole different conversation. But that's just my personal philosophy on like how I feel like a roster should be built. it might be different for you. And I think these disagreements are always cool to talk out because, like, hey, you have your side of it. You wouldn't want to take 2 running backs. You don't think you have to. I think might be in a position to take 2 running backs because I don't know what the future is of Nick Chubb on this team. And if I'm not sure of the future, I'm going to plan for the future by drafting more running backs and keep reloading that deck. The next one comes from Forceman47, who says Mims is going to be a great player, but he'll probably be there at 98, 111, maybe even at 126, depending on how the draft shakes out. Just about every single mock or draft site, Big Board have him lower and available in lower rounds. Nah, that's not true. That's not true because that's like anecdotal evidence. And honestly, we're talking about a mock draft. So like, maybe Mims is going to be there at 98. Maybe he's not. But if Mims is somebody I think is a pick that you could take at 42, like sometimes we get wrapped up in the value on draft, and value doesn't mean a goddamn thing when it comes to the draft. It only means something from February to July. That's the only time value matters. Perion Winfrey is a great example. What a value in the 4th round. Did we feel any of that value during the season? Hell no, because he didn't play up to the level of expectation. He's still a good value, but did it matter? And that's where I'm at with value. We only assign value off of what we think people's draft boards look like. We don't know what all 32 draft boards look like. So trying to assign value to a pick, I think is ridiculous because teams do things that you don't expect all the time. The fact of the matter is, if you think a player is worth the 42nd pick in the draft or the 44th pick in the draft, wherever the Browns pick, and you value that player at 42, that's his value. It does not matter what Mel Kiper says his value is. It does not matter what Todd McShay says his value is, because as much as they're around draft coverage and as much hard work they put in, those 2 dudes aren't making any picks, so their value is irrelevant. My value is irrelevant. Pro Football Mocks, their values is irrelevant. If you value that player at 42, if you say, I think that Marvin Mims can be a starting ex-receiver in the NFL, and I feel good about taking him at the 42nd pick in the draft, that's his value. It don't matter if this mock say you can get him at 98 or that mock says you can get him at 126, because the value means nothing unless the player's good. And if you go and get somebody who people covet more who doesn't end up being good and you miss out on Marvin Mims, perfect example. How many of us would rather just have George Pickens on the team right now versus having the value of moving back and getting a corner that we might have to trade this year because we have too many corners? The value means nothing unless the player is good. And I think we have been doing draft and been commoditizing how many picks and what you could get here so long that we forgot that the players got to be good. And in my opinion, Marvin Mims is worth that pick, because I think Marvin Mims will be a great outside receiver. Is he running a full route tree? No. Does he have to? No. In the NFL, wide receivers are usually asked to do 3 things that they're really good at. And with Marvin Mims, I see 3 things that he's really good at, and that's going to be okay for me. He does not have to be Amari Cooper. He does not have to run every route on the route tree. What he can do is go up and get 50-50 balls, make catches in the red zone, and stretch the field. That's all I need from him. And I know he can do that because I saw him do that at Oklahoma, and I saw him do it at a high level. So that's why I'm like, hey, I'm not going to play the value game. If I think a player's worth a pick there, I'm going to take that player there. I'm not going to say, well, maybe all 32 teams think he's a 3rd round pick. I'm not trying to be smarter than everybody else. I'm taking the players that I like where I think I should take them. That's how that works for me personally. I don't care about overdrafting or underdrafting a player or getting insane value for, because again, tell me the time the draft value actually matters outside of February and July. Like, even if it does, like, even if you do get a good, like, 6th round pick, are we really like sitting here like, ooh, Donovan Peoples-Jones, great for a 6th round pick? Or are we saying Donovan Peoples-Jones, good receiver? The value is so irrelevant, because if he's good, he's good. If he's bad, he's bad. That's the value. You got to pick good players, because if the guy's not good, it's not a good value. Like Greedy Williams was a great value when we drafted him. Do you feel like that was like the move that we should have done retrospectively? Great value. He was first round prospect. Took him in the second round. Played like a fourth rounder. Wasn't great value. You know what I mean? The value about this, like from pre-draft mocks and all of that, that don't matter. You got to pick good players. And we that gets omitted from the conversation too much for me. Thank you for the comments though. Like, I'm not trying to dog you or nothing. The next video is when the Browns fired Mike Prefer and the rumors were they're going to hire Bubba Ventrone. Let's see what the comments were here. This one from Small Useless Bread, who says, Look, it's special teams. It can bring you miracles, but all I really care about is that it doesn't bring miracles against the opponent, miracles to the opponents. Yes, right. If there is one just part of football where competence kills, it's special teams. Because like all I need the special teams to be is if I can go a whole year without really knowing who my kicker, punter, kick returner, or punt returner are, I would take it, because that means they not messing up, right? When you got to talk about your kicker, punter, kick returner, punt returner, it's usually because they're either really great or really bad. I just rather you be competent and get out the way of the offense and defense, because ultimately that's where the money's at, right? I don't want games being decided by players that aren't being paid to decide the games. But when you're incompetent at special teams, you decide games without, before the defense or offense can. And that's unacceptable. Special teams just has to be competent. And that comment really got to the heart and soul of that problem. Next one was a film breakdown that I want more of y'all to watch about Osagun Oluwatimi. I said he could be the next Alex Mack, 55-55. I think he's going to be a really good center, the prospect out of Michigan, originally from Virginia, who also came from Air Force. He's been around the world. Adam says, side note, I'm newer to football. This video has helped me learn and watch offensive line tape. I appreciate that. That's kind of what I aim to do with the film breakdowns. I think there are people who are much better than me at the more technical and detailed stuff, right? I think Jake Burns does a great job with that, right? Breaking it down from the perspective of a coach, because he used to coach football, and he really knows the in and outs. He was a former quarterback in college. So he's really good at that. Where I think I'm really good at is making the film breakdowns not just informative, but I think I do a good job of adding a more of an entertainment element to it. Not saying that the information is ever tainted because of the entertainment. I don't do that. I find what's true and I have the fun within that truth. And I think also when it comes to communication, I'm able to communicate this to a less technical audience, right? If you don't know all of the terms, which a lot of people don't, because even if you played football in high school, these terms are sometimes exclusive for even higher level football, like college or even professional, that you're not going to get much if I'm just saying like these real technical terms. So I try to break this down and I try to talk about this in more everyday terms. I try to make these videos for the everyday fan, the everyday diehard fan who wants to know about his team. Maybe they're deep into football, maybe they're not, but I kind of want to talk about the game like people talk, right? And that's what I kind of focus on, is making sure that you're not just connecting this game to football, but connecting this game to your personal life, because I think there's a lot about football that is the same about your workplace. You know, I use those kind of analogies a lot, workplace analogies, school analogies, things that we all kind of experience generally in this country. So that's what I try to use when I do these breakdowns. And I'm glad that it's getting through to some people, that I'm not just wasting my time here. So I appreciate that comment. The next one's from G.I. George. No doubt Oluwatimi is talented. Thanks for the breakdown. However, given the current makeup of the offensive line, drafting him second or third would be all right. We got a bigger word. We got a bigger word. I'm sorry, man. I'm recording this in the morning. We got bigger, more immediate needs. Okay. Like, just off rip, if you're leaving a comment directed towards me, please never say bruh. I hate that word. So I just want to point that out to the audience. Don't say brah. I will not respond. I will not entertain. This is the last brah comment I will entertain. And it's only to point out that I'm not responding to that brah. I hate that word. It's not anything moral. It's just, I don't like how brah sounds when people say it. It's just, bro, I'm fine with bruh. Ugh, I hate. It's like if somebody says on fleek or something like that. It's just like, stop. Just stop using slang altogether. It's not for you. You don't know how to use it. But to answer G.I. George's question, though, because I do think he brings up a valid question that a lot of fans are going to have is, hey, why would you draft a center in the third round if that's not an immediate need? And I'm saying, who says, one, that's not an immediate need? And two, even if it's not an immediate need, your needs should never, ever get in the way of who you draft. Like, if you're at the point to where you're drafting to fill needs constantly in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft, you're on the Titanic sinking and you're trying to patch the holes with duct tape, because that's not what the draft is for. The draft is for future proofing. The draft is for protecting yourself against contracts that you cannot afford, getting players in positions to where you're going to have to replace them in a year or two. And that's what the Browns tend to do here. And when you get to the point to where every year you're trying to use every draft pick to fill up every hole on your team, you're trying to plug holes on the Titanic with duct tape, you're already sunk, is what I'm saying. Like, if you get to that point and you're doing it constantly, and my proof for this is literally the Cleveland Browns. Everything in Cleveland Browns history before 2018 backs me up on this. 2018 to 99, it backs me up on this. Now, that being said, I would also say, who says center is not a clear need for this team? Because Nick Harris has not started an NFL game at center since 2021. Who knows if he's still good? And he was already undersized to begin with. He just had a knee injury that was based on him using a technique that he has to use because he's undersized. I don't know if he's going to come back and become a center. You could re-sign Ethan Posick, but you're up against the cap, man. You can't be out here wasting money for centers. You already have $10 million. You already have $10 plus million to a guard. You just gave $10 plus million to your right tackle. You already on the hook for $10 plus million for Jed Wills. You already on the hook with $10 plus million on Joe Bitonio. You cannot go $10 plus million on the center. So you do need somebody to step in to play center that's not going to get a new contract. That's either going to be Nick Harris or it's going to be somebody new. Oluwatimi, I think, can push Nick Harris for playing time. If not, start. So that's where I would go with it, because your biggest and most immediate draft need is to lower the cost of that offensive line. And that's going to take years to do. It's going to take 2-3 years to do. And if you don't spend quality picks on that, and you're like, we're going to replace the offensive line with 5th round picks, you're not going to have an offensive line worth replacing too. So you're going to end up spending more money in free agency to fix the offensive line. This is how we got into that hole on the defensive line, by not taking picks in specific spots to be able to replenish a defensive line once they got old. If you're not careful, it happened to the offensive line. So Oluwatimi in the 3rd round, tremendous value. Tremendous value if we want to talk about value, right? Tremendous value to me. I think he's a 2nd round prospect, but if I can get him in the 3rd round, I would run to the podium and take him. And I think it makes sense because, 1, he could start year 1. 2, he then also gives you a starting center for the next 4 years on a cheap contract when you need cheap contracts on the offensive line. So I disagree with this whole take about having bigger and more immediate needs, because that's thinking very short term. And the Browns can't continue to only think short term when it comes to these kind of things. When it comes to free agency, you can think more short term because you're trying to win now. When it comes to the draft, you have to think long term because that's how you're going to survive in the future. So those two philosophies have to be very different at this point, because now you're paying a quarterback. The next video is from the Browns offseason. It is off to a great start. Comment here says, always enjoy your takes. Van Pelt was a backup. That was a mistake I made in the video. I think like 400 people sent comments saying, and correct me on that, Alex Van Pelt was a quarterback in the NFL, was a backup. I did not immediately see it when I looked at his bio that he was a former quarterback, so I missed the mark on that one. But everything else in that video stands up. KR Thunder says, I know it's obvious the Browns have an issue with execution, but you have to agree we're making smart moves. The effort is being made. Also interesting and worth noting, we now have a stern, transparent defensive coordinator with years of experience, a flexible strategy-minded middle-aged head coach, and a special teams coordinator, and a special teams coordinator in the building that's made a name for himself. There's a wealth of energy and learned experience here that I think will make a giant boot of motivation to all the players underneath him. If the coaches can work this, I think this is a good staff. And honestly, like, the question with Kevin has been less about Kevin around some circles and more about Kevin's staff. Like, I think, in my opinion, the thing that I feel like has held Kevin back the most is his choice of coordinators, right? I don't think that he had a great choice of coordinators around him. And now I feel like he has a great choice of coordinators around him. And this is something that happened with not Bill Belichick, because Bill had a great staff. He was just kind of an asshole. But this happened with Sean Payton early, where he just did not have guys up to snuff early in his career, had to replace guys, brought in some guys who were good at that time, and then made it happen in New Orleans. So that's a big important thing in part of this. William says, I feel like Stefanski and the rest of the Brown staff watch Quincy's videos on a regular. Last year, Quincy made the pace for carrying on Winfrey, and look what happened. Quincy just speaks things into existence, literally. And then somebody added that JOK was also in that. I don't think that they watch my videos because my videos aren't that popular to where like they would be in their orbit. And I don't know if they just spend time watching YouTube videos, right? So I don't know who's watching. I really don't know who's watching. Like, it surprises me that people watch sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, when people come up to me in person and tell me they watch my videos, because I don't be thinking about the numbers. I just be making videos because I have to do it so fast. But yeah, when it comes to Stefanski and the rest of the Browns, I think this is just a result of me being plugged into not just what the Browns do, but paying close attention to the details of what they like to do, and knowing what they like and their taste kind of being similar to my taste, right? I think it's a situation of, hey, when you like the same foods, you're going to go to the same restaurants. You know what I mean? Like, if you like steak and you like a specific kind of steak and somebody else likes that kind of, you're going to end up seeing them at that because you like those same kind of restaurants. If this is your type of vibe, it's just kind of like that. Maybe I have a similar taste to some players at certain positions, to some people making decisions in the Cleveland Browns front office, or maybe it's just a pure coincidence. I don't know. I'm just watching tape and telling y'all who I like and why. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I just kind of do this because I like watching football and talking about football with y'all. But that's it for the commentary for this week. Let me know what you guys have to say in the comment section down below. Appreciate you guys watching. Everybody have a great day. Have a good night.